St. Francis was known as the saint of the poor and of animals, but I think a church in San Francisco, and a project to be more specific, would be something that would make him proud if we were around today. Our conversation with Laura Slattery, Executive Director of the Gubbio Project. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, for the uninitiated, tell us the significance of the name, the Gubbio Project, and its connection to St. Francis.
Well, the town of Gubbio is right next to the town of Assisi, and St. Francis of Assisi. And the town is known for, the story is that St. Francis was called in to negotiate a truce with a wolf that was terrorizing the town, and quite frankly, the town was terrorizing the wolf. And so Francis actually bridged the gaps. And so in the end, it was Brother Wolf who was just hungry and actually wanted to just have some food, and the townspeople, brother townspeople. And so how can we, in the Tenderloin, be that kind of bridge so that it becomes brother homeless person and sister parishioner, or brother neighbor and sister homeless person.
Now, I was reading about the history of the Gubbio Project, which has been around now for
11 years.
11 years. It has a very simple mission. It's giving a place for tired people to lay their head, correct?
That's it.
How did that come about?
The pastor at the time, Father Louis Vitale, who was a bit of an icon in the Catholic community anyway in San Francisco, was just listening to the people, and they were saying, he was asking them, what do you need? And they said, we need a safe place to be, a safe, warm place to be during the day. And so he was thinking, well, they had just finished this huge renovation of the church, and they were opening its doors again, and they thought, we're a Franciscan parish. We can't very well be in the middle of the Tenderloin without welcoming in everybody, all the neighbors. And so the church was open anyway, and kind of the tradition of Catholic churches to be open. And there was there's masses at 7:30 and also at 12:15. And so people were coming in. And the big change was us welcoming people in and saying, not only can you come in, but here, you can lay down on the pews, and we have a blanket, and we've got some cough drops or socks or whatever it is you need, and there's bathrooms in the back. And now we've got about 300 people coming through the doors every day. Right. And there's about 110 people who are sleeping at any given time.
There's been a lot in the press lately about the quote-unquote homeless problem, and I've always been interested by that phrase, because I don't care which side of the political debate you're on, the homeless problem is mainly a problem if you're homeless. Yeah. You talk about brother wolf and sister parishioner.
Right.
Do those roles kind of shift sometimes? I mean, there's been a lot of demonizing of the homeless in San Francisco lately. How does the Gubbio Project deal with that on an ongoing basis? And is your mission sometimes really challenging? I mean, these aren't all just people probably who are as cogent as you and I are. Right. They probably have a lot of issues that make your job challenging.
Well, that's true. And there's kind of two questions there. One is, we're really trying to shift attitudes and ideas. Sometimes people say, well, church is for the well-dressed. No, church is, my theology, it says that no, church is for everybody, right? And for folks especially. Jesus hung out with the poor, and you've got a pope that really is right now talking a lot of, saying like he wants his churches to be field hospitals and a church that is poor. And so this particular church is trying to live that out, welcoming in everybody, especially the poor, and making sure that they feel welcome in that space. And you're right, some folks do have some issues, and we really try and treat each person with dignity and respect. And there aren't a whole lot of rules. It's a simple project. And so, it's like, no loud talking, and no fighting, and no drug use or drinking and eating, and that's about it. Right. And if folks can do that, it doesn't matter if they're high or they're drunk, or everyone's welcome in. It's a harm reduction model, but we do have to ask once in a while people to leave, and because we need to it's a church, it's a place of worship, and so we do need to maintain that sacredness. And now, the guests themselves oftentimes will say, hey man, this is a church. We don't do that here. Right. So they actually police themselves.
There was some other press earlier this year about a church that, at least on the face of it, didn't appear to be so welcoming to the homeless. The Catholic Cathedral of St. Mary's actually started hosing homeless people down. I didn't know if I was watching a video of Selma from 1964 or something from 2015. Yeah. How Catholic is this charity? Or is this a non-denominational charity?
Well, we're a non-denominational project that's partnering with this Catholic Church. Yeah. And we reached out also to Bishop Justice and to the cathedral and offered our services. They sat down and talked with us, but they weren't so willing to jump into opening their pews at this time.
Right. So
they do a winter shelter though. So they do open the basement up for a month every winter and house about 100 people at night. So they do have that tradition.
But in your experience, this is something that more than one church could take on. The need is crying, correct?
Oh yes, we would love for other churches to do this.
Well, let's take a look. I know we've got some film here of the work you do at St. Boniface with the Gubbio project. Let's take a look.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just had a normal life. I went out on the weekends dancing, snorting a little this, snorting a little that, but it was all so cute and so innocent.
Bicycle messenger, welder, truck driver. I loved that job. I loved that job. But I have epileptic seizures, so it ain't about driving no more.
Frida was my parrot, blue-fronted Amazon. That's her lineage. Frida was my companion for 9 years. I was working, I was going to school, a lot of good things happening for me. I got so sick that I wasn't able to keep my place, and so I was evicted from my home. I had to give my Frida away.
Yeah, 7 minutes.
Wow. So this is part of a longer film about the work of the Gubbio project, correct?
It's an 8-minute clip, and you can find it on our website.
Right. How does it make you feel when you see that? I'm sure you've seen it many, many times. I mean, we live in one of the richest cities in the country, if not the world, and yet we have the need for a place for the poor just to lay their head.
Yeah, it touches my heart. People walk into the church, and I would invite any of your viewers to come and actually experience it, because when you walk in, there's just a real, I would say, a sacredness about it, a real quality of just beauty, and also sadness that this, in the richest country in the world, right? That we've come to this. It feels like we're someplace else, right? It feels like it's in a country that's much poorer than us. For those who enter who have been brought up Catholic, I think there's a real like, this is the church I was taught about. This is the church, you know.
Were you raised Catholic?
I was.
So for you, is this the church that you feel you were raised in or wanted to be raised in?
This is the church of my aspirations, right? Exactly. I walk in and I'm like, this is it. This is what, for me, the gospel of Jesus is about. Yeah.
How does it make you feel when the homeless situation is politicized, as it so often is nowadays, and in every American city? Not to beat up on my hometown too much, but it just seems like we go back and forth between, oh, the homeless are a problem, oh, we need to do better, oh, the streets are dirty. But it always seems like the people least able to be beaten up on are beaten up on. It becomes a political issue, not an issue just of someone having a place to lay their head.
Yeah, it becomes, for some reason, it becomes a moral issue, but not a moral issue about what our spending is. It becomes a moral issue about the people's choices. And it's so interesting because it becomes all about the people who are living on the streets, about their choices, not about the choices that we as a society are making to not invest in schools or investing in prisons or not investing in housing, in affordable housing. So I find that very, I would say interesting, but I find it disheartening.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever get down and just think, I can't do this work anymore? Do you ever have bad days?
I do. I think we all have bad days, yeah. I do have, sometimes I have bad days. But again, when I walk in the church and I see the people resting quietly and them being treated with dignity and respect, yeah, that's all it takes.
The Gubbio project is probably, I'm sure, not unique in the country, but at the moment it is unique. There's no other church in the United States that's doing this sort of work?
Not that we know of, and I've been there for 6 years, and I've investigated, and no one else, you know, in any in any part of the country have ever told me that it's happening anywhere else.
Now, you call yourself a Catholic, correct? No, more or less. That's interesting. That leads to my next question.
I grew up Catholic.
Yeah,
I come out of the Catholic tradition.
yeah, well, I would say that too. I mean, we all grew up Catholic, I guess, in some way, in my parish. But you sound like a Franciscan. You sound like a nun or a monk. Have you ever thought of going into the priesthood yourself?
Well, not the priesthood, right? Because Catholics are not open.
No, there are other religions that have female priests, though.
That's true. That's true. I had thought about it, but I just had a little bit of a problem with the obedience, chastity, and poverty. Other than the 3 vows, I was right there.
Right. Well, I guess that really brings me to the point of my question is it ever difficult to run a charity like this, which is so about lack of judgment or lack of rules or about lack of structure in a sense? The only structure is basically, are you tired and do you need a place to lay your head?
Yeah.
Is it ever a challenge working within the hierarchy of the Catholic Church? Even a parish as wonderful as St. Boniface?
It does have its challenges. Yeah.
We only have a few moments left, but I'd like to ask you if you had one thing to say to 2 different audiences. The first being the politicians in San Francisco who seem, I'll say, unable to solve the issue of homelessness. What would it be? And then the second audience would be if you had something to say to one of those people who comes in to St. Boniface to lay down their head, what would it be?
To the politicians, I would say, hopefully, well, I think I would say let's focus our political will and put money into housing people. Because what's going to solve homelessness is housing, affordable housing and housing, supportive housing for folks who need that. And to the folks who come into the church every day, I would say you're welcome. Come on, please hang in there, and you're doing okay.
Great. I think St. Francis would be proud. Thanks very much, Laura, for your work on behalf of everyone at the Gubbio Project.
Thank you very much.
Next up, our conversation with, well, I think one of the savviest Bond girls I've ever met. Meet Suzanne Agassi and our conversation about Registry for a Cause. We'll be right back.